welcome to SFG Top Performance. Today we have our regulars Derrick and Jason with us. Jason's going to lead us off on what he's seeing out there.
Well, every time we've talked, it's been something a little different. It was dry weather, wet weather, dry weather, wet weather, and now we're back to dry again. It's 3 weeks ago, I never thought we'd talk about dry weather the rest of the year, but a couple days 100 degrees and a week, and then they're talking some more. It's changed our crops significantly in areas. The beans, they look good. There's a lot of beans in the bottom half. The top half, they're filling out yet. And I've been in several bean fields this week. They are in full defense. The pods on the top are shriveling up and feeding the pods on the bottom. And the leaves on the bottom are turning yellow, and it's pulling all of the water out of that leaf to fill the pods. And, I've looked at some fields that had fungicide on them versus the ones that didn't. And the ones that had fungicide are definitely greener. It definitely worked. And it's, there's definitely been a value to that. It helped that plant retain water and did what it was supposed to. It kept it cooler, and it appears to be working. We'll find out when the combines roll how much that amounts to, but from what I've seen, it definitely worked. Derrick, in the bean fields, what are you seeing out there?
Pretty much the same thing that you're seeing. Any of the 3-0 or earlier, they're about probably halfway turned right now, so they're pretty much done. Even if we do get lucky and catch a late rain, I don't know how much help we're going to do to them. But late rain in the 3.2s to 3.6s, I think they still have a chance. Sometimes if we can catch one that first week of September, we can add a few bushel in that top cluster because, like you say, it's sucking them down right now. And I haven't seen a lot of. We started off with beans that had that top cluster, and I haven't seen a lot of them stick around. They're all starting to look. These afternoons are starting to look a little gray, going on defense. You can definitely see the tough parts of the fields are starting to give it up on the soybeans, and on corn it's about the same way. Corn I think is pretty much made right now. Been into a lot of the stuff. Everything 112 day and earlier, we were right close to black layer, and so we kind of say 35% corn at black layer, but it's going to be 2 to 3 weeks. It's going to be about go time in some of this corn. I can't believe how quick it's drying down. This next week we're looking at 90 degrees. Again, won't be quite as bad as the week before, the 100-degree furnace, but we get some 90-degree windy days. That corn's just going to keep drying down. And maybe we lost a little bit of test weight with this dry weather, but overall I'm pretty happy with the corn. I think we'll be a tick better than last year, and I don't think the dry weather's hurt us too terrible bad in this area. And beans are just we're up in the air on. I haven't stuck my neck out too far to say what we think the bean yields are going to be, but Jason, with this weather, it's been drier now. We had our big 100-degree furnace last week, and the weather cooled off. But what are we seeing out there for diseases, or have the diseases stopped with this kind of weather?
In the beans, you're still seeing some sudden death. You're still seeing some other diseases, but a lot of them, they just look like they've turned farther, and they've definitely slowed down, I believe, but they're under stress. So all these beans are under stress, and I think even the good beans have kind of caught up with that a little bit, turning colors. So, in the beans, I think, I think they're far enough along for, like you said, the 3-4s and under. I think it's too late to worry about any of that kind of thing with them. The corn, on the other hand, I think, you've got some information to talk about tar spot. That's definitely made a difference in it. If there was tar spot, the worse it was, the browner it is. And you have some information to talk about there. Do you want to talk about that now, Derrick?
Yeah, we've kind of been keeping an eye on, I'm calling it our hot spot. That's just northeast of Knoxville a little bit. And kind of northeast Knoxville farther north, we have a tar spot. It's kind of blown up a little bit. I've seen a little bit south. Pleasantville has kind of a sprinkling of it. It's kind of coming in. But you don't have too terrible much over there, just a little bit.
Every field has some, but it's not terrible.
Not bad.
The fields, the worse it is, the browner the corn is. Yeah. You can see it from the road now. You don't have to get out there.
Well, and I'd say this hot spot next to Knoxville, I didn't get any pictures of it yesterday, but I got a whole set of pictures I will put up from last week. It's going to be pretty rough, and I think we've lost some yield in that area. And there's a big difference between the sprayed versus unsprayed. This tar spot's a really robust disease, and it's still, this weather, I still think it's blown up the whole entire time. It's been humid enough to keep it going. We've had these real heavy dews, and it's just where it showed up big. And I think we're going to see, I don't know if it'll be 10 bushel, I don't know if it'll be 30 bushel, but I think we're going to see some yield loss on these tar spot areas. And do believe we'll see some differences in the field where you could find areas that were sprayed versus unsprayed. Big difference between different fields that were sprayed, but it was into different hybrids, that sort of thing. And we've seen a lot of differences in hybrids being able to handle the tar spots. So that's kind of what we're trying to evaluate, see if we can at least set ourselves up for next year. Because the bad part is we have these hybrids all over, and you take one in Knoxville and it's blown up and it's really bad, but then you go over to Melcher Dallas, for instance, there's hardly any. I can't find any over there. So it's just a matter of where it's going to show up, and all these fungicide applications were preventative applications for it. So you just can't wait until you have it. You could say kind of our best recommendation now is if it's a little wetter in June, that's when we believe this infection happened. If you're getting some moisture in June and things are conducive for fungicide growth, you're getting a lot of leaf wetness, I think you'll have tar spot come up there. So that's our best recommendation right now, that if there's water in June, if you got fields that are wetter than most, then that's going to be a good candidate for spraying for tar spot at beginning of July.
Yep, that's for sure. And we've talked a lot about this year's crop, but a couple of weeks this year's crop's going to be gone, and we're going to have to start worrying about next year. And we need to be planning for our soil samples and getting the GPS stuff lined up. But Derrick, this dry weather, there's been a battle for years. You don't soil sample when it's dry. You don't soil sample when it's wet. How they've changed the methods a lot. Are they as critical to make sure the soil is just perfect as they were 10 years ago, or is it more?
Well, it totally depends on who you ask. How's that?
That's a good question. But
there's two ways. The biggest one that we can see the biggest swings is potassium.
Yes.
And where on the dry years, there's a couple ways to do the potassium test. There's the dry method and then there's a slurry method. And the slurry method is more consistent with the samples. Most labs do the dry method. So overall, when we're talking about soil sample and making those recommendations, we do want to have a little bit of moisture out in those fields. And so after harvest goes and we're talking about soil sampling, we just want to make sure it's not bone dry, like we don't get any rain for the next 2 months. It's going to be, I just don't know if those samples are going to be the most accurate and that sort of thing. They're getting better, and labs are calibrating them better, but also our soil samplers, when it's rock hardened like that, they have a tough time getting the probe in the ground. I wouldn't want to be stomping on the probe getting in the ground when it's that dry, but also we need to find a way to be able to do the soil samples, because like we saw this year with this dry weather, we have a lot of potassium deficiency out in these fields, and they showed up because there's just less water to take it up. So even though the potassium's in the ground, but we got to make sure it's in the ground in that 3 to 4 inch root zone. So we got to be putting it on most every year if we can. Fertilizer prices, Charles can go over them a little bit, but they're hopefully going the right direction, at least coming down from the highs the last 2 years, that sort of thing. So it should be better about putting dry fertilizer on, and we just need to be looking at that again, because we know people cut back. We've cut back. People haven't put it on before the soybeans, that sort of thing. That's going to be something we really need to dive in and look at, see if we can get caught back up to those levels.
And with as inconsistent as our weather has been this year, we're going to have the right moisture to take them. So we're going to be good by fall. Now we're talking dry. 3 weeks ago we were talking wet. So we're going to have good weather to take them. So don't let that bother you. Get your soil samples figured out and plan where you want to take your samples. That needs to be done, as soon as the conditions are fit. So don't let the weather slow you down in your decision there, because it's going to change.
Charles, how are we ready for harvest, or how's all the facilities doing?
I think it's official. We're going to grow crop. We better make sure we got room in the bins, and everybody's getting bins cleaned out, getting the final maintenance pulled on all the equipment. For the most part, we got a lot of the remodeling projects about done. We're winding down. As you can tell, we're working on our roof here on the building here today, but we're struggling through that. But anyway, trying to get a lot of things finished up. But it's been a great working conditions for the last couple of weeks here. We're trying to get done. We can officially say we're done spraying. We haven't had any combines chase us out of the field yet, but it's going to happen. I think we need to be done, but no, outside of that, everything's going great. The new Centerville office building's come along really well. They're coming ahead of schedule, if you want to say, on that. They hope to be in it here next month or so. I'm sure there'll be a lot of things they got to tweak there, but anyway, Milo's come along real well. Pleasantville's come along. We're just constant getting things tuned up. So outside of that, everything else is in pretty good shape. So I want to thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.